Welcome to our Digital Writing Center process workshop. My name is Sam. I am the Senatobia Campus Writing Center Director at Northwest Community College. And today my goal is to provide you with a broad overview of the writing process. Now I am going to make some more specific videos about how to generate content or how to come up with things to write about, but those will be later. So we are going to go and get started by first looking at the nature and structure of writing itself. Okay, so this picture on the left describes my writing process, which the structure of writing is the caffeine molecule. More realistically, though, guys, the structure of writing can be described as a series of stages and as circular and not linear. These stages, once it's not like you go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, there you can move back between stages. The only time I would not recommend this is between drafting and planning, because if you move back from drafting to planning, what that means is that you did not take long enough to do your planning stage and to think some things out. Okay, so let's look at that first stage of writing, the planning stage. So, in this stage of writing, you are getting your ideas together and you are producing documents. A lot of people don't think of planning as a stage of writing where you are producing things, but you absolutely are. You are producing planning documents, and these can be a lot of different things. They can be diagrams, charts, outlines, pictures, notes, anything that helps you come up with ideas is a planning document. Now, I'm only going to go over one strategy right now, but like I said in the beginning of the video, I will have multiple videos explaining how to come up with stuff to say and videos which preview specific strategies that you can use. Okay, so the general strategy that I recommend is something like this. So do some research about the topic that you're writing about. Do some Google searches. Look on the databases on the Northwest Library website and start taking notes. You can take 1, 2, 3 pages of notes. And as you get further into the process, start organizing your notes. And then keep organizing them and keep organizing them until you have some idea of what it is that you're going to say. This occurs very gradually. Don't try to force anything in this stage. What it is you are generating stuff, you are generating content so that when you begin writing your paper, you're not going to have to wonder, what do I say? Instead, what you'll be thinking is, how do I say it? Which brings us to the second stage in the writing process, which is going to be drafting. Like I just said, the major concern of drafting is not what I'm going to say, because you should have at least 3 to 4 planning documents that you are using while you're drafting to help you with that question. But the question of drafting centrally is, how do I say what I want to say? What is the best way to communicate the message? We're going to talk about audience later and the importance of tailoring the message to a specific audience. But for right now, I'm going to give you some general drafting tips that are going to help you say what you want to say and then how you want to say it. So, my first drafting tip is to draft a little bit at a time. There is no rush when drafting. If you spend 12 hours writing a whole paper, you will not only be miserable, but it will probably also not be a very good paper. I have done that before and I have regretted it. So, my recommendation is that you write about 30 minutes every day and that you let stuff flow naturally. You should think about how it is that you're going to put what you want to say, but this should not stop you from writing. One of the main problems that I see over and over again is students simply stop writing and haven't produced enough content in order for their paper to get better. So, really, we want to let those thoughts flow onto the page relatively uninterrupted If you're struggling with what to say, look at your planning documents that you created for yourself and focus a little bit on how you want to say what you want to say, but it shouldn't stop you from writing, and those thoughts should flow without interruption. Okay, I think that that's all on drafting. So we're going to move on to the next stage in the writing process, the third stage, which is revision. Now, a lot of people confuse revision with proofreading or editing, but that's not what this stage is, guys. Instead, what you are doing when you are revising is you are looking for something called higher order concerns. A higher order concern is something that is not line editing, that's not grammar. It's looking at the paper as a whole, saying stuff like, does my argument make sense? Could I potentially add something here that connects what I've already said to my goal? So it's stuff like considering audience, purpose, message, making sure your message is clear, making sure your message is tailored to your audience. I'm going to go over 6 focus areas that you can use during revision and explain what each of these areas is so that you are more comfortable with them and that you have stuff to target and focus on during your revision. Okay. So the first thing is content changes. You can make content changes. Maybe you need to add a little bit about something that you want to address. Maybe you want to remove something that you've written, and that is perfectly okay. Say you've written a paper on the very broad topic of pizza, and you find that most of your paper has been on a specific pizza place in New York that you and your family very much enjoy going to. But you have, say, 1 or 2 paragraphs that are about the history of pizza, and you may feel like that kind of detracts from the overall focus of the paper, so you remove those and you spend another 2 paragraphs talking about a specific aspect of the restaurant that you like instead. This is all something that can occur during revision. Next would be structural changes. Say that you wrote a paper and the paper is organized by dates, but you really want to focus instead on the cause and effect relationships. Well, you could go back and you could change the structure of your paper to more of a cause and effect structure. And that would be something that you could focus on during revision too. Third thing, this third one is so important, connecting sentences or paragraphs. One of the number one reasons why I find that students struggle with writing is because they don't connect their ideas to one another. So sentences which connect our ideas to one another are called transition sentences. And it's very important that you go back and you connect your ideas from your drafting process so that it makes sense. Modifications to word choice, tone, or readability. So there's a lot of different stuff packed into this, guys. So let's look at word choice first. Say that there are some specific parts where you just feel like you used the wrong word. Maybe take some time and come up with some better words that more address the message that you're trying to deliver as a whole. Tone. What tone is how you're coming off to your reader, how your reader is perceiving you. So you might want to revise your tone if you are coming off as condescending to your reader, or if you're writing a serious paper and it's coming off as humorous. So these might be things that we address during revision. The final one is readability. And I'm not talking about at the sentence level readability, guys. I am talking about at the paper level. Does what you're saying make sense? And if you get somebody else to read it and they can't understand it, it probably doesn't. If you're reading it to yourself and it's not making sense, then you probably need to focus on clarity, organization, and readability. Audience analysis. Now, I like to think about writing from a rhetorical perspective, and a rhetorical perspective on writing sees writing as prose that is aimed at changing someone's perspective. So In order to change someone's perspective, you have to consider where they're coming from. You have to consider who your message is directed to. So when you're writing something and you're revising, make sure you target what you're writing to your audience. And you should answer the question, so what? Why should this audience care about what it is that I am saying? The last thing to focus on is limiting the scope of your composition. So I've already talked about this under content changes, but whenever you're removing stuff that does not go or align with the main focus of your paper, then that would be limiting the scope of what you're saying. A reminder, there is no revision without analysis. Analysis is the act of breaking things into parts and seeing how the parts come together as a cohesive whole. If you have not looked at how each paragraph relates to the writing as a whole, relates to your message, then you really haven't done the revision process that you need to do. I will say, guys, that this is a very, very important process, and this is where writing improves the most. A lot of people think it is editing, but it is actually revision. It is dealing with those higher order concerns that are preventing you from crafting the paper that you want to craft. Last stage is going to be editing, and I'm going to use an analogy here. I don't know how many people have video edited before, whether you've used Final Cut or Premiere for video editing. But typically when you video edit, you shoot all the footage in advance. So you have more than what you need when you start editing. And when you start editing, you're simply sequencing clips, sequencing sounds, adding transitions, very minor stuff to improve the cohesion of the video and the overall message. But it's the same thing with writing. Editing helps make stuff more clear, but you should already have the content, you should already have revised, you should already have addressed those higher level concerns before you start editing. Editing includes stuff like grammar and sentence readability. So some strategies for editing are to read it aloud. My recommendation is that you read it at least 4 times aloud. This should help you catch any errors. You can also do something called reverse essay reading. This is where you start from the bottom of the essay and read to the top. Notice that this is not reading from right to left, so you're not actually reading it backwards. Instead, you're reading from the bottom of the paper to the top of the paper. Why might this be helpful? This is helpful because it moves the focus from the message as a whole, what you intended to say, to what you actually said in each of the sentences. So when you read the sentences, you won't read what you intended to write, you will read the sentence itself. And then you will ask yourself, does this sentence communicate what I want it to communicate? So that is editing, and that is a brief overview of this final stage in the writing process. I hope this video has been helpful and provided you with an overview of the writing process. Remember that writing is not linear. It occurs in stages, but you can move back and forth between those stages. And that you need to have resources for yourself and have planned out what you're going to say before you actually start drafting. All right, this is going to be the end of our writing process workshop video. Like I said, I'll be making more specific videos for y'all on how to generate content during planning. But again, hope this has been helpful, and I can't wait to see what you guys write.